Okay, let's get started. And back to where we started the programming from. Ghana's government is under pressure on the economy ahead of the general election scheduled for November this year. Analysts are hoping spending to woo voters can be controlled this time around. The Ghanaian authorities were heavily criticized in the last elections for spending so much to get voters to vote. This time around, things are expected to be slightly different.
It's too close to call whether Ghana's President, John Mahama, will win re-election in November. But on one score, success is starting to look attainable. The government is on course to get through an election year without triggering a fiscal crisis. In 2012, when the country last went to the polls, the budget deficit doubled to one of the highest rates in Africa as the ruling National Democratic Congress ramped up spending on civil service wages. Politicians and economists say there is no evidence of a repeat of that spree this time around. Mahama has embarked on the pre-campaign Accounting to the People tour to highlight spending on infrastructure, hoping that voters will overlook the hardships brought on by a period of austerity if there are visible signs of development. Market seller and mother of three, Christiana Ablate, says she will not be impressed by pre-election splurges, especially as her business struggles to turn a profit.
All these expenditures being made by our president, John Mahama, he's spending because of us, and is doing all this so that he can gain favor from the voters and to beat the opposition. In my view, it's unnecessary to spend money on things that are not needed.
Economic growth was nearly 15% in 2011 when prices were high for gold, cocoa and oil, but had fallen by 2015 to just 4%. Ghana was obliged to adopt a $918 million three-year deal with the International Monetary Fund to correct a persistent fiscal deficit. The scrutiny that comes with the IMF deal also reduces the likelihood that Mahama or opposition leader Nana Akufo-Addo will face economic turmoil when one of them is sworn in.
Inflation remains very high. It's still very high. It went up recently. The growth momentum has also slowed. It is not picking up as was expected. So we're really not doing that well. Government is really under a very precarious financial situation. There's not too much money, and one would have expected that government could have been able to at least borrow some money from the central bank to actually finance some of its budget.
Analysts say years of power cuts followed by higher electricity prices aimed at reining in spending have hurt consumers and manufacturing, which could lead voters to punish the incumbent.
Let's ramp that further. On Monday this week, Ecobank Research Group released reports, third quarter 2016 Middle Africa strategic report, speaking about Ghana. Let's bring on via Skype in London, Gaimin Monyane, who is the head of macroeconomic specialist at the Ecobank Group. Thank you very much, Gaimin. We thank you for finding time to be with us on the program this afternoon.
Thank you.
Now, could you please give us a summary of this report about Ghana's economic direction?
Well, the report highlights recent progress under Ghana's extended credit facility arrangements with the IMF, looking at how far it's come, and also provides a short-term outlook in terms of the expected outcome. The report is quite positive in some aspects, although there's still a number of challenges facing the Ghanaian economy. We've seen real GDP growth actually accelerates by fastest pace since December Q3 2014. And this, of course, has been due to a lot of activity in the ports and industrial production and other areas of the economy. However, inflation remains very high. It's actually slowing, but it still remains high, which continues to require very high interest rates that's constraining private sector activity in the economy. The exchange rate, of course, has actually stabilized to some extent. It's been down only about 2% since the beginning of this year. This compares again with 25% last year, the same period last year. So if you compare 25% down last year and 2% down last year, we can see that Ghana has made significant improvements under the reform with the IMF.
Gaimin, you and I know that if you're sitting here in Africa and you're discussing any macroeconomic issues, as soon as the word IMF comes into the discourse, everyone begins to get a little bit jittery. So the IMF is sitting down with the Ghanaians with the extended credit facility that started last year, 2015. So this will be a very good conversation. Remember the days of the HIPC, the highly indebted poor countries in which Ghana eventually got out of. Are there concerns out there about the latest relationship between Ghana and the IMF?
Well, I don't think so. I think what the IMF's involvement in Ghana has actually helped to restore confidence in the economy. I mean, one indication of that is the currency. I mean, before the IMF intervened with this package, we saw the currency just sliding and by about 20 to 30% per year. Now, between January and this year, it's down only about 2%. So that is a radical improvement. And I think we've gone beyond the days where the IMF just dictates and governments just accept it. I think now they tend to reach some kind of compromise on how to go about doing things. And we've seen that the IMF has been satisfied with most of the reforms that are taking place right now, although the wage bill still remains very high, which continues to be a contentious issue between the IMF and the Ghanaian government.
One last question. Yes, where you finished off the Ghanaian government, the next election is about 4 months away, and concerns are rising that once it gets to elections, politicians seem to have no scruples about opening the vaults and throwing the money at the voters, hoping to secure whether an incumbency or to get into power.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a possibility. But so far, we've seen some kind of reduction in fiscal spending. The indicators are showing that at the moment. We've seen the government's deficits only equal to about 0.4% of GDP, and this is against a target of 1.5% of GDP. Last year, we also saw the government spending, the deficit equal about 6.7% of GDP against a target of 7%. So we're seeing a gradual improvement in that area, and this is part of the reason why we're seeing some kind of recovery in the foreign exchange markets, because the lower government spending means weaker demand for foreign exchange, and then this tends to boost the value of the CD. So I think going forward, yes, there is a possibility that there could be slippages, but I think with the IMF on board, such a negative outcome will be limited.
All right, thank you, Gaimin Monyane, for those insights today. Macroeconomic specialist at Ecobank Group, State of London. Let's talk to the gentleman from Wema Bank, Olalekan Idowu, who is a forex dealer. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on the phone.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, it's Friday. I'm sure you. Yes, from Wema Bank. Thank you very much. Very quickly, where's the naira today? Are there concerns? What may likely happen to the currency?
Actually, the FX market has been so very a little bit active today. Market was actually trading around 285.5 in the interbank market, and we expect more intervention from CBN. For now, the only supply to the market is from CBN and majorly from some other oil major that is ready to sell to the market. And for the rest of the day, we expect market to remain stable. Interbank market will close in the next 10 minutes for now.
All right, thank you very much, Olalekan Idowu from Wema Bank. We appreciate that. Keep your eyes on the numbers.